Okay. Ethan, could you tell me the difference between the long and the short run?
For the long run, wages and contracts are sticky. I mean, in the short run.
Short run wages and contracts are sticky, and in the long run?
In the long run, they're not.
Right, they're flexible. Okay. Yeah. AJ, what are two things consist of fiscal policy?
The change in taxes and change in government spending.
Okay, great. Brian, monetary policy?
It's the change in the money supply through reserve requirement, open market operation, or the discount rate.
Okay, great. I'll just, because it'll be impossible for someone to know what I mean. MPS is the marginal propensity to save. So it's change in income over change in savings. Rather, change in savings over change in income. And the marginal propensity to consume is change in consumption over change in income. And just realize MPS plus MPC must equal 1. Nate, money multiplier?
That'd be 1 over the reserve requirement.
Tax multiplier?
That is the spending multiplier minus 1.
Okay, and spending multiplier?
1 over 1 minus the MPC, or 1 over the MPS.
Nice, good job. Ethan, how would you tell the difference between real versus nominal GDP?
Real accounts for inflation, while nominal is just the money value in dollars.
Okay. All right, good. And I'll do the last one. Discretionary fiscal policy is government spending or taxes, and non-discretionary is like the AKA automatic stabilizers. So non-discretionary would be welfare, unemployment, things in that nature. Okay, any questions on these? Okay, let's do some problems. All right. On the outline, I put at least the questions down. So I figured if you had the questions, you could. So I'm going to give you a minute here. Assume the marginal propensity to consume is 0.90. As a result of an increase in tax rates, the government collects an additional 20 million. What will be the impact on GDP? I'll give you a minute to think about it. Okay, Brian, what do you have for this?
I have C.
All right. So, Brian, first, let's get the money multiplier.
I did 1 over MPS, so 1 divided by 0.1.
Okay. So, right, if you're going 1 minus 0.9, I'm just trying to get this to right now for me. All right. There it is. All right. 1 over 0.1 gives you 10, right? Now, Brian, you've got this wrong. So I want you to read the problem and then tell me what mistake you made.
Oh, it's a tax multiplier.
Right.
Okay. So it would be D.
Okay, right. So then you get 1 minus the spending multiplier, which would be -9. You take -9 times 20, and it'll decrease GDP by 180 million. Okay. Any questions on that? All right, we just got to make sure you just read these carefully because, like, I don't know, did any of you else forget that it was the tax? But I think Brian knew it. It's just the reading of it. Okay, let's see what we got next. All right. Could this just go away? Yeah. Nope. All right. In the long run, if aggregate demand decreases, real GDP and the price level will change in which of the following ways. So will real GDP increase, decrease, or stay the same? Will price level increase, decrease, or stay the same? Okay, I'll give you guys a minute to ponder. And if you're using the outline, I think I gave you space to graph, so you could, I think it makes it easy to answer these problems. All right. AJ, what are you thinking about real GDP? Increase, decrease, or stay the same?
I think real GDP would decrease.
Okay. Now, if aggregate demand decreases, which way is it going to shift? AJ? Left, right? I think you said that. It was hard for me to hear, but okay. Now, AJ, you've got this wrong. I want you to read the problem and tell me why you think you made a mistake. See, could you fix it?
Is it because it's in the long run?
Yes. So where you are now, okay? Do you need more? How are you going to get to the long run? What's going to shift in which direction?
Short run aggregate supply would shift right.
Short run aggregate supply is going to shift right. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. And you're right. It's going to shift right because you are making less output. You need less workers. Demand for workers is down. So therefore, wages will decrease, shifting SRAS to the right. Now, here we are in the long run. Has real GDP increased, decreased, or stayed the same?
Stay the same.
Stayed the same. Price level, increase, decrease, or stay the same?
Price level would decrease.
Yes. Okay. All right. Good job. Any questions on that? Again, just you got to read these carefully, make sure they're going short or long run, and that's it. Okay. Let's get to the next. All right. The economy of the country is currently in equilibrium at point A in the diagram. If the government does nothing, okay, so the government does nothing and wages are flexible, so which will most likely occur in the long run? I'll give you like 30, 45 seconds to think about how we're going to get from here, from point A to the long run. Okay. Nate, what's going to happen here?
So less workers are going to be needed as the RGDP is to the left of the LRAS. So that's going to shift aggregate supply to the right, decreasing price level while keeping the equilibrium's real GDP the same.
Okay, Nate, could you give me the three shifters of short run aggregate supply?
Resource prices, actions of government, and productivity.
Okay, great job. All right, any questions on this? All right, good. All right, I'll give you like a half a minute or a minute to think what will cause stagflation or cost push inflation. They're the same. I'm just using both terms. So what would happen to this graph if stagflation or cost push inflation occurred? Okay, Ethan, what would happen?
Short run aggregate supply would shift left.
Would shift left, okay? And it's called stagflation because price levels would go up and output would go down. So you have the two worst things. You have inflation working and lower output, all right? So any short run aggregate supply shifting left, usually due to event that causes like cost to go up, resource cost to go up. Brian, what are the four shifters of aggregate demand?
It's the consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports.
Okay, great job. Thank you. All right. It might be hard to read these, but automatic stabilizers could do which of the following? AJ, what do you have here?
I think it's C.
Nate, what do you have?
I'm going to be honest, I don't remember what automatic stabilizers were.
Okay, that's like unemployment and welfare.
Got it.
Okay. Ethan, what do you have?
I have C as well.
And Brian?
I think that it might be E because you said it's for unemployment and welfare.
All right. All right. So you guys pick C, right? Allows policymakers to formulate a set of rules flexible and comprehensive enough to eliminate discretionary actions. Well, discretionary action, increasing taxes or government spending. So they won't want to eliminate discretionary actions. The answer is actually A. So if tax revenues are down, all right, that means the economy's in a recession, right? Because we're less people are working, people are making less income, so tax revenues are down. And if we're in a recession, what happens is the automatic stabilizers gives you more unemployment, more welfare, things like that. When things are going well and there is high tax revenues and you're in an inflationary gap, there's less use of the, less unemployment. So that tries to slow the economy down that way. That was a tough question, I thought. And Brian, E would be more of government spending, which would not be an automatic stabilizer. It'd be a discretionary. And that's something like Congress would have to approve. Any questions on that one? That might be the hardest automatic stabilizer question I've ever seen, but hey. All right, faced with a budget deficit, the government decides to decrease expenditures and taxes by the same amount. This action, this action will affect output and interest rates in which of these ways? Okay. All right. I will give you a minute to think about it. Ethan, what do you have here?
I have E.
Did you say D?
E as in Ellen.
Oh, E as in Ellen. All right. So let's start with output. Why would output decrease?
Because aggregate demand will decrease because the spending multiplier has more of an effect than the tax.
Okay. So aggregate demand is going to decrease for exactly what you said, because the spending multiplier is going to outpower decrease in government spending is greater than a decrease in taxes. So AD shifts left. All right. Now, where did you go? How did you go with interest rates?
So for interest rates, since the price level is lower, the money demanded should also be lower. And so that will shift left on the money market graph, and the interest rates will be lower.
Okay. Good job. You know what I don't like about this question? I wish they would have said nominal or real, because I also think you could have thought if government is spending less because they're in a deficit. So if you look at the loanable funds market, if government is spending less, then the demand, the demand for government spending decreases, but that would lower interest rates also. So they both are going to lower interest rates, whichever way. So E as in Ellen works either way. By the way, Ethan, I like your explanation better because I think it's output and then you're looking at what causes there. Any questions on that? Again, just remember the government, not the government, the tax multiplier compared to the spending multiplier, because invariably they always ask at least one question like this, where you got to figure that out. All right. If the marginal propensity consume is 0.75, then a $100 increase in investment will result in a maximum increase in equilibrium real GDP of, give you a minute. Okay. Brian Perry, what do you have here?
I have that it would increase by $400.
Okay. So you had the money multiplier being 1 over 0.25, right? Which
Yes.
is either 1 over 1 minus 0.75 or 1 over MPS, which is 1 over. So that gave you 4. 100 times 4 gave you 400. Okay. Any questions on that? All right. I would say there's always a question like that. Like there'll be a question like that on the final. All right. Wow, we might have gone through these pretty fast. Suppose the economy is in the midst of a recession and government policymakers want to increase aggregate demand by 600 billion. If the economy's marginal propensity to consume is 0.75 and there's no crowding out, the government should do, all right, so what should they do for spending? And then what should they do for taxes? All right, AJ, how much? Well, first, AJ, the multiplier is what?
The multiplier would be 4.
Okay. How much does government have to spend?
Not really sure. I didn't know what to.
All right. I put the formula up here. So how much do we want to change the GDP, AJ?
Not
Right
very.
there. 600, okay?
All right.
So you plug in the 600 and you told me the multiplier is 4, right?
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out what the initial government spending should be. So that would be X. So it's just going to be 4X equals 600, X equals 150.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Nate, what's it going to be for taxes?
So the tax multiplier would be 3. Would you just plug in? I'm not sure where to go after that. So would you just plug it in as like the multiplier in
Yep.
the previous equation?
So it'd be 3X equals 600, X equals, we're going to
200.
decrease taxes though by 200.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right. So anytime you're trying to figure out like, and by the way, from the problem before that, we could have done the same thing. We were trying, let me just go back if I can. Let's see. For this one, if we plugged in $100 increase, so that'd be the initial, times the multiplier is 4. 4 times 100 gives you 400. Anytime you're trying to figure out either the effective GDP, how much is the initial investment, or what is the multiplier, change in GDP equals multiplier times investment. Okay. And there's always a couple of those. So that's a formula you really need to know. All right. And then you treat the taxes just like you would. Now, again, the spending multiplier is the tax multiplier is 1 minus the spending. So it'd be 1 minus 4. That would have given you a -3. So 600 into -3. So -200, meaning you're reducing taxes by 200 million. All right. Any question on that? Okay. All right. That's again, that's a formula I definitely make a mental note on. All right. All right. Assume that a country's economy is in a short-run equilibrium and the actual rate of unemployment is lower than the natural rate of unemployment. So what open market operations would this country use? And based on the interest rate from your open market operations, what would happen to real output and natural rate of unemployment? All right, I'll give you guys like a minute or two to think about it. Okay. All right, Ethan, let's start by where should I put the LRAS? Is it going to be to the right of this equilibrium or to the left?
It's going to be to the right.
If it's to the right, well, the actual unemployment rate is lower. So if I'm here,
The left.
huh?
Should be the left, actually. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's going to be to the left. And the reason is because now this is the actual unemployment rate and it is lower than this. All right. The way to think of it is we're producing more, we need more workers, unemployment is less. The second thing is this axis, which is real GDP, is real GDP, income, and employment. All three of those always move in the same direction. So if you're to the right of the LRAS, unemployment is lower, employment is higher. All right. Brian, being where we are now, what open market operations would this country use to get back to the long run?
They would have to sell bonds.
Okay, they're going to sell bonds, which would then shift AD left, right? So AD would come back here. All right, now, AJ, if they sell bonds, what's going to happen to interest rates?
Interest rates increase.
Yes. If interest rates increase, what happens to investment?
Investment increases.
You didn't sound sure. Would businesses want to borrow money at high interest rates?
No.
No. So investment's going to decrease, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens to aggregate demand?
Aggregate demand decreases.
Decreases. If aggregate demand decreases like I put there, what happened to output from the
Output.
original actual to now?
Would decrease.
It decreased. What happened to the natural rate of unemployment?
Decrease.
Where is the natural rate of unemployment? Do you know?
It's to the right.
No. All right. The natural rate of unemployment is the LRAS curve. So this is it. Okay.
All right.
So it didn't change. Okay. Any questions on that? Anyone? All right. I have one last thing, I think. And I try to keep it at a half hour, but okay, let's just do, I think it's the end of this kind of question. Assume instead that the central bank does not pursue monetary policy. All right, so we're over here. Okay, if there's no monetary policy, tell me what happens to the short run aggregate supply. Does it shift right, left, or stay the same? And what happens to employment? I'll give you a minute for that. Okay. All right, Nate, what's going to happen to the short run aggregate supply curve?
It's going to shift left.
It's going to shift left. And you would explain that how, Nate?
Since the real GDP is so high, they're going to need more workers, and that is going to cause more wages to be paid, which is a shift of SRAS, and that will shift it
Okay.
left.
All right, that's excellent. Excellent explanation. Ethan, what would happen to employment?
It would go up because Nate said they would hire more workers.
You hold it. But think, you're hiring more workers here,
Yeah.
right? But you're coming back here, right?
So price level is going to be higher, and they're in the long run going to lay off workers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
All right. So employment would decrease. All right. Just to remember again, like this is our GDP, employment, and income. Okay. All right. You guys have any questions on anything we did? No questions? Nothing? All right. Should I do it next Wednesday? Oh, I might be out of town. All right. I'll try to do it next Wednesday, and we'll see where I am. All right. I'll also try to post some practice questions for extra credit starting tonight. All right. Have a great day, guys. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great Easter.